Probably started back when I was maybe 2 or 3. I had a green pencil I used to like to chew on a whole bunch, and one day my grandfather showed me that you could draw smiley faces with it, and I've just kind of been drawing ever since. But really, I guess you could say lit the fire under me more than anything else was jealousy. I was dating a girl at the time, and you know, one thing led to another, and what eventually ended up happening was, you know, she ended up going out with somebody else who was an actual artist per se. So, you know, I've learned to appreciate art, not necessarily to try to prove anything to anybody else or to try to show off or to, you know, try to do anything like that. It's more so a matter of, I guess, exploring what exactly art is. I like to think that now it's become more of a, I guess, sort of an outlet almost. You know, I can kind of put myself into it and at the same time explore different ways of, you know, communicating things that maybe you can't necessarily communicate through regular speech. My exploration in art recently has been the culmination of examining systematically the various trends and movements that have occurred in the past. You know, I had this preconceived notion that if it wasn't Da Vinci, you know, if it wasn't realistic, if it wasn't Renaissance style, it wasn't art. Through the art history classes that I've taken and just actually taking the time to examine the field, I came to realize that Jackson Pollock and all these abstract expressionists, they're exploring fundamental ideas, you know, to try and explain something that's unexplainable. It's definitely one of those things that no one person in one lifetime will ever be able to comprehend. Now personally, I've taken a liking to the futurist movement of the early 1900s. I find the idea of what they were going after really interesting. I've always been a big fan of philosophy and understanding different dimensions and how they correlate to each other. And that's something that I feel that the futurists really try to explore as far as trying to paint velocity. Where I am now is nowhere close to where I was when I began. When I first got into painting, I went through a period where I tried to focus mainly on portraying emotions in order to get the viewer to feel that same emotion. Now recently, I've been trying to restrain myself to a series involving Greek mythology. I hope by picking that, you know, I was able to touch on to something that everybody, you know, regardless of their station in life, would be able to relate to it and, you know, at least be to some degree familiar with it. And I've entered a couple of pieces into some art shows. I've got a piece hanging up in Alderman, I believe, where the Chancellor is. And I've got some other pieces out and about through town. Most of what I paint and do, you know, I do more so for myself than anybody else. After you put so much into something, it's really hard to just let it go. I mean, it's almost like asking somebody, you know, how much do you want for your child? You know, I guess you just get attached to them afterwards. The world around us all is where I draw my inspiration from. You know, it's such a complicated system and there's just so much to see. You'd almost have to try not to be inspired, you know, just taking a walk down the road. One of the great things about art and about tattooing is that you're never truly limited. I think it's folly for people to feel that once they specialize in something, that's the only thing they can specialize, because everything in the universe is interconnected. Just because you study biology doesn't mean that you can't apply those principles to robotics, and art's the same way. You know, you should never feel limited to one particular genre, you know, because once you are, you know, you're stunting yourself. As far as long-term goals go, I'd probably say it would definitely have to do with art. You know, I've been very fortunate in that I was able to get a tattoo apprenticeship, and you know, just doing that has introduced me to so many different styles, you know, whether it's traditional tattooing, Japanese, new school, graffiti, realistic, you know, cartoony. I mean, there's just so much out there that, you know, I guess my dream job would be just to explore it. But unfortunately, that doesn't really pay all that much. I am kind of leaning towards going to graduate school afterwards. And I think it would be neat to become an art professor or something along those lines, you know, where I can have the freedom to continue to explore, you know, a field that I've grown to love over time. And, you know, maybe pass on some things that I pick up along the way. I guess probably the best advice I ever got was actually during my apprenticeship. And one thing that really stuck with me, even to this day, was to never be content with what you just did. If you ever do something and feel that you just can't improve on it, then it's probably time to quit.